The survivors' first priority was shelter from the lethal cold. They repurposed insulation from the cabin to create a thermal barrier against the freezing environment. A critical challenge was creating a sustainable water source, as snow cannot be consumed directly without risking hypothermia. Using salvaged wiring and a small battery, they constructed a simple circuit to power a distress beacon. This improvised device sent intermittent signals, a standard pattern used in aviation emergencies to conserve power. The wreckage itself became a tool for signaling, with reflective surfaces positioned to catch sunlight. Monitoring this beacon's power levels became a daily ritual, directly correlating to remaining survival time. This engineering effort transformed passive waiting into an active fight for survival, leveraging every available resource. The aircraft fuselage became the sole refuge against the extreme alpine environment. This type of high-altitude crash site presents unique survival challenges compared to other environments. The severe weather patterns in such regions can create whiteout conditions that last for days. Aircraft wreckage in these situations often provides critical shelter but limited resources. The isolation was compounded by the mountainous terrain's natural barriers to communication and movement. Extended survival in such conditions requires managing both physical threats and psychological strain. The unpredictable weather that contributed to the crash also systematically hampered rescue operations. This scenario represents a rare category where human endurance is tested against multiple environmental extremes simultaneously. In survival situations, the initial threats are often physical: trauma, exposure, and dehydration. However, as time extends from days into weeks, the psychological battle becomes equally critical. The need to establish and maintain a systematic routine is a key component of this mental endurance. The known survival strategy from this case emphasizes prioritizing fundamental needs first. Before attempting any complex projects, the survivor secured a water source by melting available snow. Insulation was fashioned from materials scavenged from the immediate environment, such as seat upholstery. Any found food was strictly rationed to extend its availability over an uncertain timeline. This methodical approach to basics created a foundation for longer-term psychological resilience. The wreckage provided both shelter and materials for survival, serving as an improvised hardware store of broken components. Researchers identified a critical psychological challenge: the complete loss of time perception in this environment. In a featureless white landscape under perpetually gray skies, days blend together without natural markers. This temporal disorientation creates a psychological phenomenon similar to sensory deprivation experiments. The collapse of structured routine often follows, which is essential for maintaining mental health and purpose. Without circadian rhythms or environmental cues, the mind struggles to maintain normal cognitive functions. This psychological state can lead to despair, as documented in extreme environment survival studies. The combination of resource scarcity and temporal disorientation creates a unique survival challenge. From the wreckage, they salvaged a critical component: a working instrument panel gauge. This gauge, likely an altimeter or airspeed indicator, became the core of their new timekeeping device. They combined it with other scavenged materials to construct a functional 24-hour clock. This was not merely about telling time. It was a psychological tool for imposing order on chaos. The clock established a strict schedule for essential survival tasks, such as melting snow for water. It dictated periods for rest, for maintaining signal fires, and for attempted communications. Most importantly, each tick marked the passage of another day survived, a tangible measure of endurance. In extreme survival scenarios, such structured routines are known to combat disorientation and sustain mental resilience. The clock served a dual purpose beyond simple timekeeping. Building it required intense focus and problem-solving skills. This cognitive task demanded forward planning and sustained attention. Such activities combat the mental paralysis that often accompanies hopelessness. The clock became a tangible reminder of personal agency and capability. Each tick represented progress against psychological stagnation. This process mirrors therapeutic techniques that use structured tasks to rebuild cognitive function. The physical object stood as daily evidence against feelings of powerlessness. After 47 days, a combination of factors led to the rescue. This likely involved a break in the weather, which allowed search operations to resume. The survivors' efforts to make themselves visible were a critical component. Persistent, though delayed, efforts by search teams eventually located the individual. There is much we do not know about the full sequence of events. The exact mechanics of the clock's construction are not fully documented. This lack of documentation is common with historical or isolated technical projects. Such gaps in knowledge highlight the challenges of verifying details from limited records. The device in question was not a precision instrument like a modern chronometer. Its primary function was to establish a reliable, repeating cycle rather than measure exact time. This distinction is crucial, as it highlights a common misunderstanding about survival mechanisms. Many believe survival depends purely on mental determination or raw willpower. However, willpower alone is insufficient without practical application. It must be directed through acquired skills and learned techniques. The case demonstrates that effective survival relies on structured routine and methodical action. This framework transforms abstract determination into concrete, repeatable outcomes. A common misconception is that survivors in high-stress situations are in constant, frantic action. In reality, calibrated conservation of energy is a critical survival strategy. This involves knowing precisely when to work and when to rest, governed by internal systems. The homemade clock mentioned serves as a tangible metaphor for this psychological mechanism. Such events provide clear, practical lessons for survival psychology and preparedness. This approach contrasts with panic-driven responses, emphasizing strategic endurance over impulsive action. In prolonged isolation, the human mind requires a tangible project as fundamentally as the body needs sustenance. This cognitive need manifests as a drive toward technical tasks that maintain mental function and preserve hope. For individuals in remote or high-risk professions, this principle becomes a critical survival mechanism. Basic mechanical understanding provides not just practical solutions, but psychological stability when resources are limited. The ability to adapt available materials reflects a mindset that prioritizes problem-solving over passive endurance. This approach transforms isolation from a psychological threat into a series of manageable technical challenges. The pattern appears across various extreme environments, where conventional support systems are absent. Cognitive preservation through technical engagement represents a documented psychological survival strategy. This survival mindset represents a psychological adaptation to extreme isolation. The measured approach contrasts with panic responses that often lead to poor decisions in crisis situations. This disciplined counting of time serves as an anchor against the disorientation of prolonged uncertainty. Similar patterns appear in documented survival cases where routine and measurement became psychological lifelines. The clock itself is merely a tool. The true mechanism is the cognitive framework it enables. This mindset transforms passive waiting into active endurance through structured anticipation. The counting down creates manageable segments of time, making an indefinite ordeal feel finite and survivable. Ultimately, rescue arrives not because of the clock, but because the discipline it fostered preserved crucial resources and hope. In survival psychology, the initial shock phase often gives way to a hyper-focused state where individuals prioritize tasks with remarkable clarity, a documented cognitive shift. A common misconception is that extreme cold immediately causes frostbite. In reality, the body's core temperature must drop significantly first, a process that can take hours. Investigative limitations in remote areas often stem from delayed discovery, allowing weather and wildlife to degrade or scatter crucial physical evidence before analysis. The body's metabolic response to starvation involves breaking down fat reserves first, but this process generates waste products that require water for elimination. Signaling for rescue follows known patterns. 3 of anything, lights, sounds, or marks, is a universally recognized distress signal, a principle drilled into training. Survival principles emphasize the rule of threes. A person can typically survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter in harsh conditions, 3 days without water. Mental deterioration in isolation often follows a pattern, beginning with time distortion and progressing to hallucinations, as the brain seeks stimulus in an impoverished environment. A critical mechanism for heat retention is vasoconstriction, where blood vessels narrow to reduce blood flow to the extremities, preserving core warmth. Search operations in wilderness areas are systematically constrained by probability theory, focusing efforts on sectors where a missing person is most statistically likely to be. The will to survive is not merely emotional. It triggers measurable physiological responses, including the release of hormones that sharpen focus and temporarily suppress pain.